We are starting with the topic lacrimal apparatus. Lacrimal apparatus consists of structures which are responsible for the production of lacrimal fluid, which is also called tears, and lacrimal drainage pathway, which collect the tear fluid and convey it into the nasal cavity. Now, the structure which produces the lacrimal fluid, here we have the main structure called lacrimal gland. It's further of two types. One is the main lacrimal gland and the second one is the accessory lacrimal gland. Lacrimal drainage pathway consists of lacrimal puncta, lacrimal canaliculi, and the lacrimal sac and nasolacrimal duct. Now the components of the lacrimal apparatus. Here we have the lacrimal gland and its ducts, conjunctival sac, lacrimal puncta, lacrimal canaliculi, lacrimal sac, and nasolacrimal duct. Then we have the main lacrimal gland. First is its location. It lies in the lacrimal fossa on the medial aspect of zygomatic process of frontal bone. Shape is J-shape. It has two parts. Actually, the main lacrimal gland is divided into two parts by a muscle called levator palpebrae superioris. From the diagram, it is very clear that this levator palpebrae superioris intending the gland and dividing it into two parts, orbital part and the palpebral part. Orbital part is the larger one and it's the deeper structure, and its shape is almost like a almond shape, and it lies superior to the levator palpebrae superioris muscle. The second part is the palpebral part. It is smaller, superficial, and lie below the levator palpebrae superioris. Now, as we can see, the both part of the gland, that means the orbital and palpebral part, these are continuing with each other, posterior lateral to the levator palpebrae superioris muscle. Now, the duct of the lacrimal gland. Basically, in the duct of the lacrimal gland, we have the 12 duct. Out of that, 4 to 5 are present in the orbital part, 6 to 8 are present in the palpebral part. Duct from the orbital part, they are traversing the LPS muscle and palpebral part of the gland. Then, all the duct opens into the lateral part of the superior conjunctival fornix. So, the removal of the palpebral part is equivalent to the removal of the entire gland. Then, accessory lacrimal gland, it is present in the fornix of the both eyelids. It's numerous in the upper eyelid and less in the lower eyelid. So the removal of main gland does not make conjunctival sac dry because secretion of accessory gland moisten the membrane. Now these are some questions for the self-assessment. Components, we have the conjunctival sac. What is the conjunctival sac? It is a potential space between the eyelid and the eyeball. Fornix, we have superior and inferior fornix. Line of reflection between the two parts of conjunctiva, that is between the palpebral and ocular part, is called fornix. Then the lacrimal puncta and the canaliculi. Lacrimal puncta are the small openings. Its length is lacrimal canaliculi. It's a canal-like structure. Its length is 10 mm long. It's of two types, canaliculi, superior canaliculus and the inferior canaliculus. This is a detailed diagram where we can see the lacrimal gland, this conjunctival sac, then we can see the puncta, then we can see the canaliculi, superior canaliculi, inferior canaliculi, and ultimately they are opening into the lacrimal sac. Now, the superior canaliculi, it has two parts. First part, from the diagram, it's very clear. First part is runs upward, then downward, and the inferior part or the inferior canaliculi, its the first part runs downward, then horizontally, and ultimately it opens into a lacrimal sac. Lacrimal sac. What is the lacrimal sac? It is actually the upper blind end of the nasolacrimal duct. It's membranous sac, 12 mm long. It lies in the fossa and the lacrimal bone relations. Its relations in front, it is bounded by the medial palpebral ligament, behind by the orbicularis oculi, laterally lacrimal fascia and the plexus of vein, and medially we have the arterial plexus which are separating it from the bony portion. And the nasolacrimal duct. Nasolacrimal duct is a membranous passage, 18 mm long. It begins at the lower end of the lacrimal sac, run downward, backward, laterally, and lodges. Basically, it is lodging into the bony canal, and ultimately it is going to open into the nose, in the inferior meatus of the nose. Now, the opening of this Nasolacrimal duct. It is bounded by a mucosal fold. That mucosal fold is called valve of Hisner. The importance of this valve is valve prevent air from being blown up the duct into the eye. This is another diagram which is showing the lacrimal gland with its ducts. Then further, here you are able to see the puncta, canalic line, lacrimal sac, nasolacrimal duct, and nasolacrimal duct, the lower end of nasolacrimal duct, open into the inferior nasal meatus. Now about the vascular supply. Vascular supply consists of arterial supply as well as the venous drainage. For the arterial supply, here we have the ophthalmic artery, lacrimal branch of ophthalmic artery, and it may also receive blood from the infraorbital artery. Venous drainage, periophthalmic vein. Nerve supply, parasympathetic preganglionic fiber from the lacrimal nucleus and pons, from pterygopalatine ganglion, secretomotor, postganglionic parasympathetic fiber, supply gland by the lacrimal nerve, sympathetic from superior cervical ganglion. These are the applied aspects related with the lacrimal apparatus. One clinical condition is called epiphoria. What is the epiphoria? Excessive secretion of lacrimal fluid. That means the overflowing on the lacrimal fluid overflows on the cheek is called epiphoria. What is the cause of it? Due to the obstruction in the lacrimal fluid pathway, either at the level of punctum or canalic line or nasolacrimal duct. Now the inflammation of this lacrimal sac is called decrocystitis. Okay, these are the references. Thank you.